Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports Show for August 9th. My name is Erik and I am the man behind Etoft21sports. We have an absolutely phenomenal show for you lined up today from TVG and Fanduel's More Ways to Win. Mr. Ice Cold Exacta himself, Dave Weaver, is stopping by. We're going to be breaking down the NFC West. I'm going to be telling you what fantasy football player that's being drafted in the top 5 you want to avoid. And my boy Gino is going to be coming on. He's going to tell you what horse racing bet to lock in for tomorrow at Saratoga. Let's see what Gino has in store.
Got another play for you. Shout out to Erik, one of my good friends. Erik is one of the sharpest handicappers that you will find. Doesn't matter what the subject is. Erik is one of the absolute best. As for me, so far on this show, that has not been the case. We have been struggling a little bit. We got to get some of you into the winner's circle. So let's talk about Saratoga. Let's talk about Wednesday. And we're going to go all the way to the very end of the card at Saratoga. We're going to go to race 10 for Wednesday, August the 10th. And we're going to be looking at the number 5 in here, Clubbing. Now, I played this horse last time out on July the 22nd, and he just didn't have the best of starts, and he got caught towards the back, and he got shuffled back a little bit, and they were going really slow in that race. There was no passing whatsoever. The horse who won and went wire to wire was a 19-1 shot who got the lead. So it was not a great race shape for Clubbing. That was just his second career start. That was just his first start on the turf. Now, if you look at his pedigree on the grass, his dam was a 3-time winner. She was multiple stakes placed on the turf. And his half-sibling Passing Out was a 3-time winner on the grass and was grade 3 placed on the turf. So I think he has the right to get a little bit better. And this race is contentious. I think it should have a little bit more pace than we saw for him last time out. So the number 5, Clubbing. Let's hope we can get into the winner's circle one of these weeks. We've been struggling. 8-1 on the morning line for me. My value line for him was 9-2. So anything over 9, we'll make a win wager right there. Make sure to tune in to Erik's show each and every week. If you want to give me a follow on social media, it's me, Gino B. Good luck in all your plays.
Guys, please make sure you follow Gino. He has a great podcast that comes out every Monday and Friday. I'm on the Friday one breaking down NBA, NFL, whatever is happening. Let's get this horse Clubbing home. And now let's jump into the fantasy football spotlight. The player that is in this week's fantasy football spotlight is Mr. Derrick Henry. Henry, per Fantasy Football Pros, has an ADP of 4.7 and is currently the 4th running back being drafted. There's a couple of reasons that I'm looking to fade Henry this season in fantasy football. The first is the offensive line. The Titans lost Roger Scaffell and David Quisenberry. Both were in the top 13 per PFF of run blocking. And let's face it, Taylor Lewan has not looked like himself since he tore his ACL. Also, losing A.J. Brown, the Titans are going to be facing more stacked boxes, thus putting more pressure on the offensive line to get that initial push at the point of contact. I also think we're starting to see the wear and tear finally have an effect on Henry. His yards per attempt were down 1.1 yards last season. I rewatched the Titans game versus the Bengals, and Henry didn't look right. He only had 62 yards on 20 carries. He has 955 touches the last 3 seasons combined, is 28 years old, and he's running around with screws in his foot due to the Jones fracture injury he suffered last season. Thus, that is why I am fading Derrick Henry this season and not drafting him in fantasy football. Now, we are at the time of the show. We're going to be breaking down the NFC West. And let's welcome to the show Mr. Ice Cold himself from TVG and FanDuel's More Ways to Win, Mr. Dave Weaver. Dave, how you doing today, my man?
I got an ice cold one right here just for you.
You got an ice cold? My boy Nick is giving you a shout out right here. Ice cold.
Yo, yeah, everything's good, man. Thanks for having me on. I do very seldom podcasts. I've been on Gino's, as a matter of fact. I've never done one myself just because, I don't know, seems like you put in a lot of work to do this. And I do have to do my regular stuff. But at the same time, though, you'd probably be talking about stuff that I've already, digested. But, I like doing things like this and being able to talk football with you. And quick question. So I have Henry.
Okay.
Actually, no, I have the 5th pick in my draft. If Henry goes like not picked at 4 and I have him at 5, skip.
I would take Najee Harris or Joe Mixon.
Okay.
I mean, I love those two a lot. The thing with Najee Harris is there's just nobody there. He just gets all the carries and everything. I think Joe Mixon is in line for a sneaky season this year with the improvements in the offensive line. And the pace of play and the early run down rate and the early down run rate when the Bengals had the lead, and they're going to be better this year with that offensive line, makes me think they're going to be running a lot more than they did last year. So that's what I would do.
Henry then. No Henry for me.
Henry.
I'm down.
No Henry. So we're here to talk the NFC West, but before we dive into that, speaking of Gino, he told me I needed to ask you about your guys' road trip.
Yes.
To Erie, Pennsylvania.
What do you need to know?
Well, he said it was quite eventful. I mean, do you have any tales from the road?
Well, I can tell you this. I really don't want to divulge too much, but I can tell you that either the smoke detector in Gino's hotel room was either dismantled or went off. I can't remember which it was. I think it was probably dismantled to prevent it from going off.
Okay.
But it was a fun night.
It was a good time. Good time.
No,
good
Gino's
time
always
here.
great, and to get it go on the road. I mean, Erie, Pennsylvania is in the freaking middle of nowhere. You know, it's like it does have an airport, believe it or not. I've done it twice. Once I went to Pittsburgh. If you can see, I got my Mean Joe jersey on. I'm a Steelers fan, and I drove up. It's about, I think, 3 hours. And then the other time I flew right into Erie, and it's like the whole food option there is a vending machine. They have like one gate. The guy that does the baggage also flies the plane, I think. It's like the one-man operations.
One small town USA.
It was cool to go to a spot like that. And then we went to this wings place, and you know, I forget what it's called, Quaker Steak and Lube or something. But we got good memories out of it. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great story like you were probably looking for, but Gino knows how to have fun. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right. I can see that. So we're not here to tell stories about partying on the road and everything in the hotbed of Erie, Pennsylvania. We're here to talk a little NFC West. And we're going to start, and we're going to go in the order that they finished last year. The odds will be scrolling across the bottom. All odds will be given out via what was on Fanduel this morning. We're going to start with the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks, they were 7-10 last year. Their Pythagorean win total was 8.9. To win the Super Bowl, they're 130-1, NFC 70-1, NFC West 15-1. They have an over/under of 5.5. Their strength of schedule is 11th in the NFL. What do you think of the Seahawks this season?
I'm not a huge fan, only because they have nobody that can run the ship. You know, it's either going to be Geno Smith or Drew Lock, two pretty less than spectacular options. The highlight, I think, of late last year was Rashad Penny. I mean, here's a guy that was the second drafted running back in 2018 behind Saquon Barkley, and he didn't really do a whole lot, you know, his first couple of years, and I thought he had a really good season. He had some games that caught my eye. That's actually one of the bets that I'm looking at on FanDuel. His total for the year, 799.5. 800 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it's kind of the flip side of what you were saying with Mixon. They're going to be winning a lot of games. He's going to run. Seahawks are going to be losing a lot of games, but even though they're going to be losing, I still think it's a good option to hand it to Penny. So that's kind of the one player that I'm targeting on. I mean, they have Lockett and Metcalf, but I just don't think these guys, whoever it may be at quarterback, whether it be Gino or Drew, are going to be able to do what Russell was going to do. So I think passing game is going to be down. I'm not in love with the 5.5 over. Actually, seems low, right? I mean, that's a bad year to go 5-12, but I think they're a 5-12 team or a 4-13 team.
Now, the draft class coming out next year is supposed to be loaded with talent. The kid from Kentucky, Miami, Alabama, Ohio State. The fact they didn't really trade for anybody besides Drew Lock.
They don't need to tank. They can play at their level, and they're not going to be good, right?
Yeah, it kind of makes me think you know what I mean? They're kind of like playing to get one of those guys. Just to piggyback what you said about the run game, the last 6 games of the season is when it really started to bloom. They brought in Andy Dickerson. He took over as the offensive line coach. The last 6 games of the season, they averaged 176 yards rushing per game. Before that, it was only 87. Dickerson getting promoted, I really feel, was the key. He really implemented the zone running scheme that fit Penny pretty well. Do you think Carroll makes it out this year as the coach? Do you think he can like survive, or do you think there's any chance he gets fired?
I'm going to do a little word puzzles like we did when we were in elementary school, but it's a math question for you. If Pete Carroll chews 2 packs of gum per game and he chews 20 packs of gum in the 2022 season, how many games is that? That's 10. I looked at it. Their bye week is week 11.
Yeah.
I think they're 2-8 at the bye, and it's just time to part ways. I don't think it's his 13th year. They're not going anywhere right now. It's just a guy that wants to stick around and rebuild the franchise and wait 8 years to get back to the playoffs. I think it would be a nice thing for him to be able to get at it. Seattle, if they're not doing well. And I mean, I looked at the first 10 games. They have a game. I think they could probably beat the Falcons. And then I think they have either the Giants or there's another, team that they probably could beat. But there were 8 teams that I didn't see them being able to get a W against. So 2-8 at the bye, and he's gone. That's the way I see it.
We do have a question for you from my boy Bobby.
Yo.
How do you feel about Walker Rookie of the Year at 16-1?
But I like Rashad.
You like Penny.
So
yeah. You probably missed that part.
No, not necessarily, because we've seen split backs, and one guy just really starts to impress the coach and starts to get a little bit more playing time. But because I think Penny is going to kind of be able to dominate that duo early, I'm not going to bet that. But if something happened to Penny, or maybe he just doesn't have the same start to this year as he ended last year, and Walker starts to suddenly get these opportunities. Okay. I mean, anybody that tries to sell me something at plus 1,600, I'm always glad to listen,
I mean, in
something like that.
In fairness to my boy Bobby, he did go to Michigan State like Kenneth Walker did. So I mean, like there is that. There is
Sparty!
That. He is a Sparty guy. I did a little research. Obviously losing Russell Wilson is a big deal. Shane Weldon is the offensive coordinator. He comes from the Rams. He wanted to implement the short passing game, trying to get the ball to Metcalf and Lockett in space. Wilson was really against it. And for what I'm being told from the people I know in the organization, those two butted heads a lot. Wilson was more drop back, throw it up. Weldon wanted to get the ball to Metcalf in space, Lockett in space. So I think that does kind of help Drew Lock.
Probably.
What I mean? There's 3 steps, get rid of it, and then he has less to think. I think that's good. Defensively, they are switching over to a 3-4 system. This will allow them to blitz more and to cover up their issues they have in the back 4, because this back 4 could be one of the worst in the league. Obviously, losing Bobby Wagner is going to be big because he can do it all. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. He can drop back in coverage. Before we dive into their schedule a little bit, you mentioned Russell Wilson. Are you a Russell Wilson guy?
I am. It doesn't mean I'm all in on the Broncos this year, but I am a Russell Wilson guy. He did not look like himself after that hand injury, but the last 3 games, he started to kind of look like the old Russell Wilson. The things that he was able to do the last 3 years with that offensive line, I mean, I don't have any number in front of me, but he had to be one of the top 3, forced out of the pocket quarterback. I mean, it just seemed like he was always scrambling and never had a chance to pass the ball, and he still put up good numbers, with the exception of about the middle part of last year. But yeah, I think the move out of Seattle is going to be a good thing for him from going forward. And I'm a fan. I always have been.
So Bobby asks again, so the under 5.5, that's your lean?
Yeah. The under 5.5 and Penny over 799.5 would be my two Seahawks plays.
Now, you talked about their schedule. I just have a couple spots circled on their schedule.
Okay.
Week 5 Third road game in 4 weeks versus the Saints. That's brutal in the league, traveling so much. Week 7, they play the Chargers after the Chargers play the Broncos on Monday Night Football. I think we could be getting a little bit of value there. Maybe the Chargers.
Where's that game?
That game is going to be in Los Angeles, but
they'll be like a 10, even though they'll be like a 10-point dog probably.
Yeah, so we'll definitely. I think we'll get some value there. This is a great situational spot. I think it's probably the second best situational spot in the NFL. On week 12, they're coming off a bye. Week 11, the Raiders play the Broncos. Week 13, the Raiders play the Chargers with Seattle sandwiched in between. I think this is a great spot. I think this could be the Raiders laying points on the road. I think they're going to be live in that spot.
I mean, are we talking covering, or are you talking trying to find 5 or 6 wins to get this to go over? Because they could cover in some of those spots, but they're not beating the Chargers at SoFi.
I'm talking covering right
just
here.
To cover.
I'm just talking covering. Talking covering. I mean,
it's a long way down the road to know what's going on.
Oh, I know.
At that point. But those are good. Like, it's a trap spot, right?
Yeah.
Totally looking ahead. Nobody's going to be caring about Seattle in between 2 important games. I'm with you on that.
And then another spot, week 15, Thursday Night Football. They're hosting the 49ers, who play the Bucks the week before. Bucks are going to be a physical team, especially up front on the defensive line. 49ers have some issues we'll get into a little bit later. I think they could be getting points there, and we've seen teams historically struggle going on the road on Thursday Night Football. So I think that's a spot they could cover.
I love Thursday Night Football. The first Thursday Night Football, Rams and Bills. Going to be it's going to be something. September the 8th. I mean, that's what everybody's waiting for, just to get the season kicked off again. But I'm trying to pull it up here? Do you have?
I have
do you want to write those games down, or do you have the whole schedule?
I have the schedule right in front of me.
So they play Russell week 1, right?
Yep, they play Russell week 1.
How cool is that? I mean, that's like right off the bat, he gets to try to smack the Seahawks down.
Like right off the bat, I think he's going to light them up too. I think he's going to hold nothing back. You mentioned Thursday Night Football. I'm sorry to digress. I have a phenomenal Thursday Night Football story.
Okay.
So one of my friends, he works security for some guys in the Eagles, like huge guy. And after the Eagles won it all, he was like, hey, I can get us on the field, because they played that first game of the year.
Yeah.
And there's a bar in Philly that the Philly special is named after. And I was like, Nick, I want to go to this bar. This is the bar I want to go to. I want to see it. What Nick didn't tell me was every Thursday night is drag queen night. So we go into this bar and it is swarmed with drag queens, exactly what I was not expecting in lovely Philadelphia. And that's my Philadelphia Thursday Night Football story.
Sounds fun. What did they have the game on? Were they
No, we went to the game. We're on the
field. It was after
the bar. Yeah. So it was definitely an experience. And this is like $1,000 pot too. You know what I mean? Like, so there was people really going after it there. But just to recap here, I have no futures on Seattle. You're on Penny over rushing yards, and you lean the under of 5.5.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't touch them to win the West. I mean, what was it, 14-1?
I mean, to win the West on Fanduel this morning was 15-1.
Yeah, I mean, just they're gonna be last. I mean, let alone win it. I couldn't touch any of that.
So now we're going to shift to the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco, fun team. 10-7 last year. Pythagorean win total was 10.26. Super Bowl plus 1,600. NFC plus 700. NFC West plus 200. Over under of 9.5. Their strength of schedule is 5th in the NFL. What do you think of the 49ers this season?
There's a lot going on with this team. That is for sure. Kyle Shanahan's back, his 6th year. Great coach. I mean, their defense is stellar. It looks like Jimmy G is going to hand the reins over to Trey Lance. I don't know what to make of that. Honestly, Jimmy G's had pretty good run over the last 4 years or so, but I think it's time. I think it's Trey Lance time Debo was in and out, trade, no trade. He got his money. He got his contract. We know what he can do. He's explosive. He can catch the long ball. They've put him in at running back a lot. I think that might have been a little bit more because Jimmy G just wasn't giving them what they needed down the field. So they were just, trying to get Debo involved any way that they could. Elijah Mitchell, here's a young guy that could absolutely blast up. But I think this team defensively, if they're going anywhere, it's not because of their offense, and it hasn't been over the last couple of years. It's going to be because their defense is just so good. Obviously, outside of Seattle, to me, this is a very good division with the Rams and the Cardinals. So I like the 49ers. I don't know what your stance is. I don't think they're winning the division, but I think that they can win a lot of games.
Nick asks, if Jimmy G ends up staying in San Francisco, do you think he ends up the starter again?
I don't. I think it's almost. You mean like at any point during the year? Like if he sits around and he's back up for the first 4 weeks, and Lance sucks so bad that he comes back in as a starter.
Let's say they start Lance. They go to Chicago, they lose. They beat Seattle, and then they have this stretch, and then they lose out going into the bye. Okay, so they're sitting at the bye with 1 to 2 wins, like 2 and 6. Do you think they go back to Jimmy G, or
it's just like the Daniel Jones, Eli Manning situation, where like in desperate times call for desperate measures? It could happen, but honestly, I don't think he'll be around that long. I think they will understand that he's still a commodity, packageable, and try to get something out of him, because I think they've pretty much signed away the fact that Trey Lance is their future, and that's why they drafted him. I think it's commitment time on him.
Now, I'm a Lions fan. As it pains me, I'm a Lions fan. Okay, I would die for a quarterback that in 3 years he's led me to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship in 2 out of the 3 years. Why are they moving away from Jimmy G? Was there a point last year when you were watching the game and just said to yourself, hey, if they had a different quarterback, they'd be winning?
Yeah. I mean, there were a few bad interceptions that I remember. I think he had 12 on the year, another 3 in the postseason. But I don't think he led them to anything. I think he game managed. I think he did what he needed to do to win a lot of games, which is a good trait. There's a lot of non-star quarterbacks that are going to win you games by playing smart and knowing how to at least move the chains and try not to make too many turnovers. I mean, 12, he didn't lead the league in interceptions, but he was, I think, somewhere in the top half of the league in picks. But I think they were 21st 2 years ago in points and maybe 15th last year. So the defense is what's getting them to these championship games, into the Super Bowl. It's not Jimmy G.
You mentioned the defense. I really feel the key to the defense is they only blitzed 20% of the time last season, but they had the 5th most sacks in the league. So that's four of Bosa, Killaw, and Armstead. Those guys are able to disrupt, and they're able to. I'm not a big fan of their back four. I think they really struggle against the deep ball. But when you have the front four being able to generate so much pressure, it doesn't allow those routes to develop, and it kind of hides a little bit of the issues that they have. I'm having a flashback right now because you may not know this. I had the 49ers. I got them at one point at 20-1 just to make the Super Bowl. And I'm flashing back to when that kid dropped the INT that would have cashed my ticket in the NFC Championship right now after I said that.
I had the Rams for the Super Bowl, so I was happy. I was happy about that.
At least one of us won. So looking at the offensive line, this is kind of my worry point. Now, granted, Trent Williams is one of the best offensive linemen in the game, if not the best left tackle in the game, but he's the only starter that's returning. The other ones are inexperienced, and they really don't have that top end of talent like they did last year with their offensive line. In the Shanahan zone scheme, I mean, that does kind of hide the issue because it's just really, this is your zone block there. It doesn't really a point of attack. type of blocking game. With Lance coming in, I think it's going to look like what RG3 did with the Redskins all those years ago. A lot of pistol formation, spread formation, zone option running game. They did make an interesting draft pick, and you mentioned Elijah Mitchell. With the third round, they drafted the kid Tayron Davis Prince, the running back from LSU. And that kind of makes me think that this knee injury that was hampering Mitchell is a little bit more severe than they're letting on. You know what I mean? Because like you do need some offensive linemen. My boy Max Mitchell from Louisiana was on the board, who I think is a steal. Do you think like I'm just reading too much into the situation there, or not?
No, I think the fact that they picked up Anthony Lynn too to help out on the offensive coaching side. I mean, as far as I know, there's really no offensive coordinator position, as Shanahan pretty much can call his own plays. But it looks like Anthony Lynn, the former Chargers coach, is on board as probably close to offense coordinator, but a run game specialist maybe. So that I think picking him up is a big boost for the running game this year for the Niners. And maybe they'll have to figure out, do you think Debo is utilized more this year with Trey Lance, or was that kind of a desperado situation where they were just trying to create offense, and with Jimmy G out, they don't need to hand off to Debo anymore?
So that leads me to one of my bets. I am from the mindset that nothing makes them money motivates everybody. That's my thing in life. And I was looking at Debo's contract. He has a $650K bonus if he runs for over 380 yards in a season. And it's kind of unheard of. You'll see that in a wide receiver's contract, a running back bonus. So with that being said, I was looking at Fanduel this morning. His over-under for yards is only 350.5. So I bet that over, just because I think with that incentive, they're going to try to get him that, and that gives him motivation to accept that. You look at week 10, that's when they started using him more in the backfield. He averaged 7 carries a game and 43 yards rushing a game. I just need him to get 26 yards a game in the season rushing. I think they're going to do that. And they've shown, like the NFL has shown with these incentives, when it gets toward the end of the year, if it's close, they'll try to get the player the incentive and the bonus. I think 350.5. I think that's really doable for Debo.
Didn't Brady throw something to Gronk for like 500,000 or something last year or 2 years ago, or $1 million, or it was a lot? It was a lot of money. Yeah,
I mean, so I think that's doable, and I think it's kind of like, I was trying to remember. This is the first time I ever remember them like seeing something like that. So I like that. That's my first bet on the 49ers. I actually have two. Reed asks, is the under 10 wins a possible play, just giving how much of unknown Lance is?
Yeah. I'm going to play the over, though, because I think their defense will win them 10 games. I think, did you mention that their strength of schedule was like really, really high?
Yeah, they have the 5th strength of schedule.
So I'm not buying that. I mean, I saw that they were the 5th strength of schedule, and I started looking at their teams. I mean, they play the Bears, they play the Falcons, they play the Panthers. Their first 6 games, they have like 3 slam dunk wins. Mm-hmm. They do have some tougher teams second half of the year, but a lot of those teams they host. You know, a lot of the better teams they play at home, which certainly increases their chances of winning those games. I'd rather play a bad team on the road and be able to pull off a win. So I think the strength of schedule 5th is a little bit misleading to me. I think they'll win 10, and it's not because of Trey Lance. It's because of the defense. By the way, are you like sneaking into Debo Samuel's accountant's office at night and like hacking the computer to see his contract details? How do you know all this stuff?
See, here's the thing about, I don't sleep, Dave. Like Dave, I get like 2 hours a night. I'm on Twitter all the time. I'm searching these details, and I just Googled it, and some guy in The Athletic wrote this article, and it had all the incentives, and I was like, 380 yards rushing?
I'm an idiot. I pay like $99.99 for The Athletic, and I read like one article a year. I'm like the guy that pays for the gym and never uses it. Like The Athletic loves people like me. Not that they care. They'd rather somebody read 1,000 articles, but I'm one of those guys that I signed up, and now that you mentioned The Athletic, I'm like, shit, I should have been reading that article, but I don't work as hard as you, admittedly.
I think you work harder than me, man. You're on TV every time I look, dude.
Yeah, I have other stuff going on, but but still.
We're gonna have to have a little. Now, I'm a big Miller Lite consumer, so we may have to have a little Miller Lite bet on this one.
I have a few friends that love the Miller Lite.
I bet the 49ers not to make the playoffs. I found this on Fanduel at plus 160. Now, this is my thought process.
Okay.
When I just say this statement out loud, the last 2 seasons, Lance has been very limited. He didn't play at all his last year at North Dakota State. Only played a handful of games last year in the NFL behind an offensive line that's only returning 1 starter, and I'm getting plus 160. And they have the 5th hardest strength of schedule based on opponents' win percentage last year. So when I say it out loud, it just kind of makes sense to me. I feel people are unfairly comparing Lance to Josh Allen. It took time for Josh Allen to become Josh Allen. I think it's going to take Lance a little time to get to where people think he's going to get to. And I think there's value on the plus 160.
Let me ask you this question. Could we both win?
We could actually
Could I get my 10 wins and it's not enough to make the playoffs? Or is 10, I don't think with a 17-game season or an 18-week season, that 10 games is a slam dunk to get the wild card anymore, right?
No, add in that extra one, there's no slam dunk.
So maybe we both cash.
Yeah, we could easily both cash. And then no one has to pay up a Miller Lite. So, we'll have a Miller Lite bet on that one. There's just a couple spots I circled on the schedule. Week 5, they go at Carolina. Carolina has a really good defense this year after playing a West Coast game on Monday Night Football against the Rams, the rivalry. I think Carolina can cover that game.
Baker Mayfield?
I think they can cover that game. I'm not a big Baker guy. Gino and I argue all the time. He's Team Baker.
I'm Team Baker. I bet Baker to win the MVP, like whenever, like his second year, whenever that was. And it was terrible. I thought Cleveland was going to go to the Super Bowl, and they lost to Tennessee like 56-3 in week 1. I'm like, oops.
I'm not Team Mayfield at all. I don't know. I think their defense is good, and I think it's just tough, like playing that late game on the West Coast.
No, off of Monday, right? Yeah, that's brutal.
Traveling all the way out east. I think that's a little bit tough. Week 7, they play the Chiefs after the Chiefs play the Bills. I think that's kind of a sneaky spot. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but that's definitely a spot to kind of look at it. Week 8, I think the Rams are an absolute hammer spot. Rams are coming off of a bye, and this will be the 49ers' 3rd road game in 4 weeks. Oh, God, Bobby. Cheesecake Factory. Do you know the Baker Mayfield Cheesecake Factory stories?
No, does he have like unlimited? Who's the guy? There's a basketball player that has like unlimited Chipotle. He goes every day. Oh, I think it's Mikal Bridges, like every day Chipotle. Does he have like Cheesecake Factory tokens that he gets to cash in on?
The Cheesecake Factory story is going to be an off-air story. It's not. Okay. It's not something we can say in this because I want to keep my PG-13 rating. So we'll have to save that for off the air.
It's a real story.
Oh yeah, this was like a big thing. Yeah, this is like a big thing. This happened like 2 years ago. I want to say. I think like the year they lost to the Titans. It was that year when all this was going down in the Cheesecake parking lot.
All right.
So I digress. Week 10, they're coming off a bye. They play the Chargers, and the Chargers have the Chiefs on deck. Just kind of a look-ahead spot. Week 14, they're playing the Tampa Bay, coming off a short week. And
that's at home, though, I think.
Yep, that's at home. So I think that's a great spot. I mean, I think Tampa Tampa has got some offensive line issues, and I think Bosa and team will be able to get there. Week 15, we already mentioned going to Seattle, but then they have extended rest playing against the Commanders. So I think that's going to be a hammer spot there. Anything else we want to talk on about the 49ers? You have the over, and I have Debo over rushing yards and them not to make the playoffs.
We went 20 minutes or at least 10 minutes talking about the 49ers and didn't mention George Kittle. That's almost impossible because is he like a totally forgotten guy this year? I know you like the PFF ratings. He comes in off of last year with a 90.7 PFF. That's skyrocket high when you get into the 90s, and we're talking about everybody else but George Kittle. Him alone, and you're talking offensive line. I've had games where I bet him over yards, over receptions, and he didn't do shit because he was blocking. So he could be kind of the makeup guy for the lack of offensive line that you say they have because he can do it all. And just the fact that we went that long without mentioning George Kittle, he deserves some kudos because the guy's a stud. Oh, I might take over the show by myself. We might have lost our host. If that's the case, we will wait till he gets back in, and we're talking George Kittle. 15 minutes straight and didn't talk about the best player on their team, in my opinion. I mean, Debo's Debo. I haven't looked at George Kittle's contract. I don't know if he happened to get some incentive, not for rushing yards, not if you get 380 rushing yards. But George Kittle is somebody that it's just crazy that we went that long not bringing up their Pro Bowler. So I got the rundown here. I got notes. So if he comes back in, I'll tell you where we're going next.
I lost my internet, and
there
I'm
you
sorry.
go. I hosted it. We're good. I hosted that whole segment because I could see that you lost the signal. So what I was telling them was we're going to go to C8 on the rundown here, and we're going to move to the Arizona Cardinals.
I love it. Let's talk a little Cardinals. Looking at the Cardinals, 11-6 last year. Pythagorean win total was 9.95, so they did overachieve a little bit.
Well, yeah, you're right. It was a little bit, but they were over that total like 10 weeks. They were like undefeated. They're the first team to hit their win total because they never lost, and then they tanked at the end. But it was crazy, like how far they overachieved in the very beginning. But go on.
So yeah, I have a theory about that. Now, this is my theory. Let me run it past you. So I was looking at them. I feel that they just play so fast that by week 10,
tired.
They're just tired. You know what I mean? And I really feel like looking at Kingsbury, he needs to understand there's three. You go fast, slow, moderate. He just goes fast or slow.
There's no break. There's no third gear. It's first gear all the way.
So, I really feel that, they need to kind of slow down a little bit if he wants to keep his job.
Well, he's going to keep his job. I mean, this is his fourth or fifth year. I think it's his fourth year. When he took this team over, they were 3-13, not not 8-8, 3-13, and they've been on a winning streak. So, and I mean, unless they went 0-17, I don't think there's any threat for him to be risking his job. And look at the players he has. I mean, Kyler Murray, he got paid. Do you know any of his incentives? Because it's funny that you should say money is the greatest motivator, because we've seen it happen a lot of times when somebody gets their money, there is no motivation anymore because I already got $200 million. So what does it matter now? But I think Kyler's the kind of guy that just loves to compete. I mean, he is just feisty and just I like Kyler Murray. So I'm okay with him getting paid. I mean, that's a lot of money. It's probably more than
he should.
He probably should get for what he's accomplished so far in the league. But I mean, as a bettor, I've done well betting on him, whether it be on the Cardinals or player props, because anytime touchdown scorer, Kyler Murray is usually a pretty much slam dunk.
Phenomenal bet. You mentioned that he's got in his contract, and then it came out, and then they took it off. Required to study 4 hours a week of film.
shouldn't that be like?
That
Shouldn't you not have to write that? Like, shouldn't you be studying 4 hours a week to begin with? And then, does that mean that he wasn't, and they knew he wasn't? And like,
I think that's what.
Kid, you need to read these defenses, and we know you're talented, but you can't just show up and zip it around and scramble. I mean, maybe that means that he knows, they know, and now everybody's on the same page. And he's like, "Look, you don't need to put that in my contract. I'm going to do what you want me to do because I'm going to take this team to the Super Bowl this year."
Now, I was looking at them. I felt their offensive line underachieved last year for how good they are on paper. Only 18th in pass blocking, 31st in run blocking. And I really think that was due to the struggles of DJ Humphries and Rodney Hudson. They have no depth behind them. Those guys need to get back to playing the level that they're capable of playing. And then we look at defensively. I just don't like what they do defensively. They play this.
Really? They got a lot of good players.
Well, they play this wide 9 system. So what that is like, here are the tackles, and then the defensive ends are outside of it with the linebackers here to fill the gaps. And it's really easy to do against when you play a team that has a zone running game and you play Shanahan and McVay who do the zone running game. I just feel you're kind of like playing into their strengths. I just don't feel like it's a good matchup for the teams you play 4 times a year.
I think their problem is DeAndre Hopkins is not playing the first 6 weeks. He's suspended. And look at what happened last year when he didn't play, when he got hurt. They didn't win. When he was on the field, they won. This is super cool. As part of my job on More Ways to Win, we were on Radio Row. We hosted some Super Bowl shows, and DeAndre Hopkins was on our set, and he was one of our guests, and he was like, awesome. Like, it was so cool to be able to talk to him and ask some questions. And he wasn't cocky about it, but he was like, hey, when I was playing, we won. We were winning. Yeah. When I wasn't playing, we didn't win. Like, I don't think he was trying to be an asshole and say, like, I'm the best player in the world and without me, we can't win. But it just was like, it hit home. Like, he's right. Like, when he's on the field, they're a totally different team. And with him not being able to play the first 6 weeks, are they going to go 0-6? Are they going to go 4-2? Are they going to go 3-3? I mean, if they're a sub 500 team the first 6 weeks, even when he comes back, it is going to be a struggle to catch up in that division with the Rams. It just, if they can hold their own without him, when he comes back, they're gonna take off.
And I think what they're gonna do, this is my bold prediction, one of my fantasy football sleepers. I think it's gonna be the Rondale Moore show.
He was on my team last year. He sucked. But they had Christian Kirk. He's gone. There's reasons why you could be right here, but he did not win me any games. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think what they're going to do is, it's such a copycat league. We talked about Debo before. I think they're going to use him like Debo. They'll line him up in the backfield, do some swing passes, do some wide receiver screens, give them some run, because they lost Chase Edmonds. Yeah. They just have James Conner back there now. So I don't know, like, as like a 13th round flyer, like, I think he's worth it. One worry part with Murray for me, though, is teams started to play Murray differently last season. They stopped rushing him. They just had that linebacker just kind of shadow him. He needs to start making some throws. You know what I mean?
He can throw, though. I mean, if he needs to, he will, but he likes to run. So, and they brought sneaky. Like, he's so small, he goes underneath people.
They brought in Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown actually got arrested over the weekend for speed.
He did?
Yeah, for like going like 85 miles an hour. So God only knows, like, legal wise, what's going to happen there. Those guys are familiar. He can stretch the field, but you're right. Like, someone like D-Hop, who's just reliable, that can move the chains, is just so instrumental.
That's a blow for sure.
What they want to do. So I don't know. I have them right at that number. I have them like 7-8 wins, but you're right. You just look at the beginning of their schedule: Kansas City, Raiders, Rams. Those are 3 brutal games. Like, that they could go 1-2, 0-3. You know what I mean? I think 1-2 win right there.
Well, they're hosting the Super Bowl this year, Arizona. So Tampa Bay 2 years ago, first team to ever do it. Then the Rams come back and host last year. I think there's a little bit of added incentive for Arizona to go all the way and be able to host in their home stadium. So you know that they want to have a great season. It's just a matter of I think they'll finish strong, which is weird because they always start hot and they don't finish strong. So I think Cliff needs to turn that around, like you said. Pump the brakes early and pedal to the metal late. Yeah.
They have some phenomenal situational spots in their schedule. Week 7 hosting the
good or bad for them.
Phenomenally
good ones where we're betting on the Cardinals. Okay.
Well, we're betting on the Cardinals. Week 7, they're hosting the Saints on Thursday Night Football. Week 8, they have extended rest versus the Vikings. I'm extremely down on the Vikings this year. Then they have 2 great sandwich spots where we're going to be looking to bet them. Week 12, they play the Chargers, sandwich between the Chiefs and the Raiders. Week 15, they play the Broncos, sandwich between the Chiefs and the Rams. I'm not saying they're going to win those games, but I'm saying there's going to be value there, and it's a sandwich spot. So I really like them there. Also, even week 17, they play the Falcons, sandwich between the Ravens and the Bucks. So just kind of like some sandwich spots. I kind of have circled. Obviously, how I do it is I go through the schedule and I circle these spots and I make my notes, because we all know during the season with like betting and fantasy, we can kind of lose track of these spots. So that's what I do.
Survivor?
I do Survivor.
I love Survivor. So I have my chart here. I always, here it is. It's crumpled up in like absolute. There it is.
Okay.
But it's mapped out. Like there's spots where I think teams are going to be good, and you have to mentally adjust though based on what's happened after 7 weeks and not stick to what you were saying before the season started, but sometimes you map it out all the way and you don't want to get away from your thinking. And then sometimes you do the opposite and you adjust to what's going on, and then you get screwed because that doesn't continue, that those trends don't continue on.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like
recency bias.
Yeah. Because like at the end of the day, that's all we remember. We remember the last thing we saw. Now let's go to the defending Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams, 12-5. The Fager win total was 10.5, so they overachieved a little bit. Super Bowl 11-1, NFC 5-1, NFC West plus 125, over under 10.5. Based on win percentage last year, they have the toughest strength of schedule. We do have a question though from Reed.
Okay.
They say never to try and to time the stock market, but given Kingsbury and Murray's history of second half collapses in recent years, in week 10 against the Rams is a good time to start fading Arizona.
It was weird because last year I loved the Rams and I really didn't like Arizona. And remember the Arizona came to SoFi. I think it was right after the Rams had like beaten the Bucks and the Rams were proving that they're good. And Cardinals came and kicked their ass, and they're like, wow, they're better than I thought they were. And then the Rams went there. I'm like, oh, well, they'll flip-flop it. And I think they did. But they were very evenly matched. So I don't think there's any reason to think that the Rams are gonna crush the Cardinals in that spot.
Okay, all right. Get a little revenge factor.
It's a good matchup, yeah. And then the playoff game too, right? Because the Rams knocked them out in round one.
Because we need to remember, Akers knocked Budda Baker out. So I mean, that's going to be definitely a revenge factor that first time those guys play. What do you think of the Rams this year? Let's get back to the Rams. What do you think about them? Do you think they can repeat?
I do think they can repeat. I'm a Rams guy and I'm a Ravens guy. We haven't talked about Super Bowl picks, but I like the Ravens in the AFC. I think they're sneaky good with the running backs coming back. Maybe Dobbins, Edwards. They picked up a couple of free agents as well, just to kind of solidify their backfield. And Lamar's not going to have to do much. But getting back to the NFC side, I think the Rams are the real deal. They lost Von Miller. That's not good, but it's not going to mean that they can't still play very good defensively. I think the biggest key for this team is picking up Allen Robinson. Love this guy. He had a down year, let's face it, last year for the Bears. But can you imagine playing for the Bears for the last 5 years and get a chance to go to a Super Bowl team? It's exactly what happened with Stafford. You finally get away from the Lions. You get on an offensive juggernaut. And
that's
now
my team. That's my
Robinson
team, Dave.
is doing the same thing.
My
Yeah.
Lions. My Lions.
Get away from the Lions and you automatically win a Super Bowl. See how that works?
Oh, man. Yeah, the Rams are tough. You mentioned their defense. I think as long as they have Aaron Donald, they're fine.
Yeah, and that was not a certainty, right? Like he was
contemplating retirement.
Maybe, yeah, but he's back.
And having him there forces the opposing team's offensive line to double team him. This opens up stuff for Leonard Floyd and Wagner, newly acquired Bobby Wagner, to rush the quarterback. If Donald does go down, historically speaking, the defense has struggled. But as long as he's there, it's one of the top tier units in the league. I felt McVay grew a lot last year as a coach because he allowed Stafford to call plays. He wasn't taking over. He basically allowed Stafford to audible stuff. When Goff was there, he held his hand, called everything out. Now here's my thing with them. And this is like, I'm big offensive line. I'm big defensive line. That's my thing. I'm huge in this. They lost Andrew Whitworth and Austin Corbett. The loss of Whitworth, I figure, is huge because they ran behind him 23% of the time last year, which was the highest in the league and one of the highest ever. They're replacing him with Joe Noteboom, who has never been a starter in the league before. So I'm really concerned about that. You mentioned A-Rob. He's going to fit great. Everyone talks about the McVay running system. The Rams led the NFL in first down on short passes. So the little 3-step, get the ball out of the hand of A-Rob. I think A-Rob's going to eat. I think that's a great pickup. Do you have any bets for the Rams?
Yeah, so I went to Fanduel, and his total is 850.5. I mean, look, anytime you're playing with Cooper Kupp, you're not going to get the ball as much as he is, but it's still a good thing. So I think as a second option, he'll get 851 yards. So he's my prop bet for them. What's their Super Bowl? It's probably not good enough odds, right?
It's 11-1.
Oh, it is 11-1.
It was 11-1 on FanDuel this morning when I looked.
Isn't the defending champion usually automatically like plus 750-ish, plus 800 or less?
I think that it's just because all the respect that everyone's giving to like the other teams, namely, you guys opened up the Chargers right after the Super Bowl at 24-1. They're all the way down to 10-1 to win it all. The Bills are plus 650, Bucks plus 750, Chiefs 10-1, and then you have the Rams at 11-1. So those are the odds right now via FanDuel. I'm looking at it. So that's kind of tempting, 11-1, don't you think?
I like them. I mean, I'm not big on the Bucks this year. Packers just don't seem to be. Adams gone. I don't know. I don't like the Packers. I don't like the Bucks. Who's that leave? The Rams and the Cardinals are the bomb. What are they? 25-1, probably somewhere in that range.
Yeah, the Cardinals are right in that range. We just talked about them. The Cardinals are 30-1.
30-1. I mean, I would bet the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think the Saints are a little bit sneaky this year.
Jameis, I'm not sure. I mean, if Michael Thomas ever going to be Michael Thomas again? That's another question because the guy's been shell of himself. But it's hard for those guys to come back from injuries and ever get back to that top level.
I think the thing is, though, is that the AFC just is so much top tier talent, and the NFC, like, you have like a handful of teams. So I think 11-1 is a good value. And when we get to the championship game, I don't know. How do you feel about hedging?
I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't know why. I'm just not.
Okay.
I have guys that love to hedge, and they'll bet 7 different teams to win the Super Bowl. or the Stanley Cup or whatever. And, they're like, oh, if this one wins, I win 1,700. If this one wins, I win 2,200. Now, hold on a second. And now they're playing a team that I don't have, and I can bet 400 on this team at +3, whatever. And it's like, it's not how I do it. I just pick my team, ride it out. I bet the Rams before the season started +1,400.
Yeah,
and
great number.
I was just hoping that they got to the playoffs. They did. Hoping they get to the Super Bowl. They did. Did I bet Cincy money line? No. I just said, but this is my ticket. It wasn't. It was $300. It was like four grand I got. It's not like,
yeah,
maybe
money.
If it's 40,000 and I bet 5 to, I don't know. But it was, unless you're alive for like a lot of money, I don't hedge. Like, I'm a horse player. So if I'm alive at a pick six and paying, $60,000 and I have every horse but one, and that horse is 20-1 and I can bet 2,000 to win and guarantee 40,000, I'll do it. But there's just so many hedging in sports, where do you start? Week 11, week 13, the playoff, like, it's just too much for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a hedger. To answer your question, I typically don't hedge.
I'm not. There's one time I regret myself from hedging, and that was a NBA bet years ago when I had the Bucks. Bucks were up 2-0 against the Raptors, and I had the Bucks 100-1 to win the East, and they lost 4 in a row. So that was
that would have been the time to hedge, because the Raptors odds probably shot up. But
they were 25-1. So that I didn't do it. I wrote it out. Also, it doesn't help. I had Bucks season tickets that year. I was already.
You had to witness it in person.
Well, I was already counting my money. I was like, "You're going to sell the tickets. You're going to make your money for next year." So,
got it.
I do have one bet on the Rams. I took Cam Akers under 1,050 total yards. Looking at the history of running backs who have ruptured their Achilles isn't great. Akers really didn't look well in the playoffs when he came back. Plus you factor in the stat I said about Whitworth running behind him 23% of the time. I don't think their offensive line is going to be as good as it was last year. Also, they run this outside zone running scheme, and we saw it with Gurley. After Gurley got that micro fracture in his knee, he didn't have the speed to get to the outside. I think Akers is really going to struggle just speed-wise to get to the outside where that lane is on the outside zone to run. So I think at 1,050 for total yards, I think he's going to be good for that. And then you look at his factor in the passing game. Games played, he only averages 1 reception for 9 yards. So I'm really not worried about him being this big factor in the passing game. Plus you have A-Rob, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee. He's going to be a low man on the totem pole. So I found under 1,050 total yards on Fanduel this morning.
Isn't there a difference, though? Like, having an injury, I know Achilles not good, but like, wasn't Gurley like 30 or 29 or something? And Cam Akers is like 21 years old. I mean, he's straight out of college. Like, I think the younger guys have a better chance of recovering than some. I don't think Gurley was washed up at that point, but from a veteran that's just been through the battle trenches, like Akers has hit, hasn't taken that many hits in his year or year and a half that he's played. So I think there's still a little bit of positivity that he could come back and have an awesome year. But
I see it
just because of his youth.
Yeah, I'm just bad. As somebody that has to use CBD oil to go to sleep because of the pain in his shoulders and knee, I always see here on the air and caution. Dave, dude, thanks for coming on, dude. First time really talking face to face. We've talked, on social media before. We're actually in a fantasy football league a couple years ago with Gino. Thanks for coming on.
Did I win it? I can't remember.
I
probably not.
Given the fact I'm not talking shit to you, I think you beat me. So, you did mention Survivor. My buddy Dan just texted me. You got an invite into our Survivor league.
Send me the link. Yeah,
let's go. Send you the link, dudes, for that. And then thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and the stuff like show-wise you have coming out this week?
Yeah, I'm basically 23 years a horse racing guy for TVG Network, which is Horse Racing Network. But we partnered up with Fanduel about I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And once sports betting became legal, we started doing a football show called More Ways to Win. So Thursday mornings, once football season starts, you'll be able to catch me there on Fanduel and TVG, on our social pages probably as well. And personally, my Twitter handle is Ice Cold Exacta. For those that don't know, that's a horse racing reference. So you could get horse racing stuff and some football stuff there at Ice Cold Exacta on Twitter.
I'm just letting you know, every time me and my boys would go to Arlington and we win a horse racing bet, we would yell out ice cold. Like,
no, you have to yell at it, right. Ice Cold Exactas.
We would yell that out all the time. Dave, thanks for coming on, my man. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure.